this panel, as was noted, is the one on indie publishing, but particularly in the context of the funding side of things. This is why we put it in the funding track. Publishers remain the single largest source of project financing for the game industry. Despite all of the buzz around the big M&A deals and VC investments and all the activity there, publishers still remain, as I said, one of the biggest sources of funding. And so we thought it would still be relevant and important to have a conversation with publishers in the context of funding. And we've certainly seen in the past couple of years this trend towards what we called in the session this kind of indie label publishers, which is in part rethinking or evolving the role of publishers from maybe the more sort of historic notion of what it means to be a publisher. And certainly, this comes from the advent of digital platforms and Steam and the app stores and whatnot. And so we have two what we call indie publishers or publishers, although I think maybe Flare may debate the term indie. So we'll dive in and we'll explore this topic. To get started, maybe just a brief introduction of each of yourselves and a sense of the sort of scope of the publishing work that each of you does.
Yeah, so Michael, I've been a publisher for the last 10 years. Spent like 8 years total between EA and Microsoft. So on the AAA side of the publishing, like console and PC. And then I joined flaregames as a head of marketing a year and a half ago. So for the people that don't know flaregames, we are a mobile-only, free-to-play only publisher based in Germany, but operating at global level. Actually, most of our development studio are in the US right now. And we're trying to publish between 4 and 6 games every year.
Excellent.
My name's Phil. I have been with Square Enix for about 5.5 years. Before that, I came from media, so I ran a website called gamesindustry.biz. Prior to that, GameSpot and the BBC in the UK. We created a collective about 3.5 years ago, which is really, I guess, more of a service provider rather than what we consider traditional publishing. We try to help do 3 things primarily. The first is to help teams build community around their ideas, ostensibly ahead of going to a crowdfunding phase, although that's not required. Then for some campaigns we can help support directly on Kickstarter with marketing and due diligence, trying to help the trust relationship with backers. And then as a more expected service of helping to release games. So we invest into sometimes production, every time marketing, and obviously handle release and that kind of stuff.
Okay, cool. So Michael, you in particular have an interesting context, having come from Microsoft and EA, what we might call kind of older school or traditional style publishing. How do you see the role of a publisher having evolved over the past 5 years or recently? How would you characterize that?
Yeah, it's pretty funny because, publishing was traditionally exclusively on console and PC, right? Publishing on mobile. If I look back at mobile 4 or 5 years ago, people were like, why do I need a publisher, right? The projects were in the €500,000 to €1 million. And user acquisition and discoverability was pretty easy. So if you look at the teams, most of the team were like team of 10. And we saw really a big change about 2 years and a half ago, with production budget becoming bigger and bigger, in the 4-5 million. So suddenly, even for VCs, it was like a pretty big ticket. And on top of that, we saw the complexity of publishing, and especially the complexity of marketing and free-to-play, product management becoming bigger and bigger. And then we started to have a lot of studios coming to us being like, hey, I made a game that was very successful in 2000 or 2012, 2011, 2012. I have a big IP, I know mobile, but all my success I've been paid to download. So, the games that you were buying at 99 cents. And they were like, I want to bring my IP to free-to-play, but I don't know how to do that. And that's how we started to do publishing.
Wow, so much different context than sort of the Microsoft or EA style of.
Yeah, I mean, we still have there are some stuff in common in a way that we are, at flaregames, we're a pretty hands-on publisher. So, like, compared to, we see projects, like, I'm sure here I'm going to see some projects like that over the next 2 days where people are going to be, the team is amazing, the project is amazing, but they actually want to build a publishing team and self-publish themselves. And in that case, the avenue for that is definitely VC. The project that we're looking at is more like people that have a specific problem and that understand the value that a publisher can bring.
Right. Now, Phil, also you have sort of interesting context. Square as it exists today, does do more traditional style publishing, the large scale console stuff, and sort of the collective and your efforts are kind of a smaller sort of niche effort within the larger corporate entity. How's that working out in terms of the duality and existence of both of those kinds of efforts existing within the same corporate entity?
I think probably the first thing to say is that the structure for collective would be very, very hard to exist without the support of a much bigger entity. The truth is that the collective team is very, very small, and therefore, we can keep our own internal costs very low, which means that we can create hopefully sensible deal structures with respect to the developers we work with. But if we weren't able to call on the services of Big Square for things like legal, for things like QA, for to handle the relationships with platform holders, then it probably wouldn't be viable as a standalone business. So I'm very fortunate to kind of have that big structure to be able to rely on. But we do sort of think of ourselves as with a sort of startup mentality. As far as we can, we have a lot of autonomy within the business, which I very much appreciate. And I think candidly, is probably very rare within a Japan headquartered corporate business. But I think it comes down to making sure that everybody is firmly aligned on the beliefs of what it is collective is there to achieve. And I think from that perspective, again, it's probably somewhat non-traditional versus what you'd expect from a global publisher.
Can you give us some insight on the deal structure? And I'm guessing the answer is between both of you being quite different since you're mobile focused and you're not mobile. So deal structure, just a sense of.
Yeah, so there are sort of two basic deals that we work on. The first is, distribution only, where we would invest a sort of minimum $100,000 into marketing. And then when the game goes, we cover things like QA, age ratings, the whole process of the sales process. We deal with all the admin. And then when the game goes on sale, we'd recoup that marketing, specifically that marketing amount at a 70% rate until we've recouped. So we'll always pay royalties from day one. I think it's very important for small teams who probably don't have, kind of drop down cash flow from previous projects. So to give you an example, if our marketing budget is 100,000, then once the net revenue is at need to do maths, 140-ish total, then we flip, and then thereafter 70% is always to the developer, and we retain 30%. We don't touch IP, we don't take any equity, we don't require follow-on relationship. So it's fairly straightforward, and it's really sort of set up on a kind of a pretty much a template basis. So we don't have a lot of room to negotiate stuff. Occasionally, we have a limited number of investment pots that we can actually put money into production funding as well. We have a range of objectives that we want to try to achieve with that funding. It's not just, can we find what we think are going to be the most lucrative projects and take low risk bets. We're trying to look at the teams behind those projects, and I believe it or not, our principal aim, we want to build relationships, we want to support new talent. We think it's important for the industry. So we're actually aiming to try to help build sustainable businesses. So we're interested in the team behind a game as much as the game itself when we're actually looking to invest in project. And that's normally something that investors are more concerned with. But we want to try to I guess, aid stability in what's, I think, inherently an unstable industry, in respect to how fast technology and platforms move.
And just to clarify, if you are doing one where you're providing some amount of production funding, is the recoup rate the same? You do 7 to 30 until fully recouped, and then you flip, or is that different?
I mean, it varies. To be honest, we started out with a structure that then increased our long-term revenue share by 5% for each $100,000 we put into a game, and we capped it at 300,000. So if we're putting 300k into production, and then a minimum of 100 into marketing, we would recoup whatever the marketing amount is, and then we would take 45% instead of 30%. Some teams prefer that we just add it onto the marketing recoup and do it that way, so that their kind of phase 2 revenue is a clean 70 straight through. We just look at what's better for the team. Some teams are better structured if they have other investors, for example, then a recoup may be easier because that long-term rev share is kind of what they trade off.
Right.
It's kind of case by case.
And similar sort of template in terms of no IP rights. I mean, even if you're giving production funding, you still keep it clean. And,
no, there's no value to us in well, no, there would be value, I think, but there's no benefit to us if our ambition is to try to build teams up in order to, frankly, learn all the lessons from shipping one game and pour that into the next game. If we're taking the IP, then there's very little motivation for teams to go on and necessarily make that next game. It's kind of counterintuitive.
Okay, well, very nice. All right, so maybe give us some insight then on deal structures, typical deal structures at Flare.
Yeah, I mean, we have the luxury to sign like 5, 6, 7 deals a year. So the deals are very tailored. Like, it's not like we have a template and we're using that all the time. We are looking at the risk profile, so we're always investing into production and marketing. And it can be, some teams are like, well, we actually don't want a lot. I mean, we're just like, the project's already in soft launch. We're just looking for a little bit of money. Some teams we found everything, so I would say it can go anywhere between like a few $100,000 to like in the $4, $5, $6 million. And then all the deals are kind of working the same way, in a way that we recoup our investment, and then we share profit, usually 50-50.
And the recoup rate, you're recouping it 100% day one, or?
That's correct. So what we do usually is that, I mean, it's actually very complex to find. It's very complex to find the right scheme for game as a service and free to play. And if you know how to find it, please come to me, because I've been looking for that for 5 years. The way we structure that is that we're gonna pay the live cost and we're gonna pay for the marketing investment, so the team has security that the project keeps going. Like we work on building content, because actually those 6 months after release are very, very important. So we're gonna cover those costs, and on the other side to be able to offset that, we're gonna recoup 100%.
All right, that sounds very fair. Not like the deals you were doing at Microsoft. No. Is anyone from Microsoft?
I won't go there.
No comment. All right, so I'm curious then. I mean, so you're saying potentially you'll fund from the whole production, which I think typically developers are told that those deals never happen anymore.
No, those deals happen. However, I mean, I want to be realistic as well, that we don't put $6 million on the table every day. Yeah. And it's usually like, we're always looking at the full risk profile, right? So if you're a team that has no experience in video game and you have a PowerPoint and the ID is like average, I don't think you're going to get $6 million. Yeah. Sure. But yeah, so it's always a question about de-risking the project. We're also, I mean, as you said, I think it's very important for a publisher to not think about one game, but think about multiple games. Like, what we want is to establish a relation with a studio over the next 5 years, potentially 10 years.
Right. Yeah, I mean, once you build that trust relationship, and they can deliver, that's golden anyways.
Yeah, I mean, we've been acquiring 2 studios actually through publishing. So even like, when the relation is going really well, we're thinking about equity. We never put equity on day one. But sometimes, I mean, especially on mobile free-to-play, those projects are so long. Like, you're going to spend like 2 years making the game, and then if the game is very successful, you're going to work on that for like 3 years, 4 years, and we have studios at some point that are like, hey, you know what? I'm just looking to be acquired.
Interesting. I'm curious what you're seeing out there in the market with respect to other sources of funding relative to what you come to the table with. For example, with the collective, you're trying to potentially also mix and match with Kickstarter crowdfunding as a resource. Maybe it's more sort of compatible with studios taking on VC and stuff. Any sort of general thoughts on how you're seeing the developers come to you, and you're sort of one piece of an overall financial funding package? Because I'm guessing they're not just coming and saying, "I got nothing, give me the $5 million."
Yeah. So for me on the PC and digital console side, I guess most teams will have either self-funded or they'll have some sort of private investment to get them to a point at which they're ready to pitch. And obviously I think that's going to be different for different teams. The reason why we support Kickstarter campaigns is because we see there's two real key values there for the developer. The first is infusing a community and actually building a foundation of people that can actually give feedback around a game and hopefully make the end result better. And the second is that, if you're taking Kickstarter backing, then you're not sacrificing, revenue share or a portion of your company in doing so. So it's quite clean from that perspective. Of course, it's very hard work. If you saw Ella's talk earlier on, she was explained just how, I think she said it was the hardest raising of funds that she'd ever done. We've supported I think 13 projects through Kickstarter now. Every single one of them is draining, even the ones which hit a target early on and get momentum. So it's a lot of hard work, and then I'm not going to go into all the questions about where you set your target in proportion to what you need, and it's hard basically. A lot of teams though will sort of come to us and they will have some other kind of some degree of other funding. It's for us, we're not looking to fully fund. I think it's hard for me to justify that back to the business if we fully fund a game and we're not touching IP. I think that's just a hard one for me to present back. We're always kind of try to make sure there's value in what the developers have already put into a game. Maybe they've been making it in their spare time. I actually had an interesting conversation with someone where they were looking for a certain amount of funding. It was around $100,000, and my question was, well, how what's the total budget? Where's other funding come from? And the response was they were going to be putting sort of around 40 or 50,000 in. I asked if that was actually real funding, as in that was kind of cash investment. How do they value their time? And the answer was, well, we haven't paid ourselves. We've been doing it in our spare time, so it doesn't have a cash value. And my response was, no, absolutely that has a value. You should be making sure that don't overinflate it, but make sure that is an investment that you've put into your game. So sometimes it's about the time and effort people have put in. Sometimes it's cash that an investor's put in. Sometimes it's Kickstarter funding. It could be any of those or all of them in some cases.
Right. How about you, Michael? What kind of packages are you seeing or coming across?
It's a great question. I think I'm thinking about it for the first time, but I was seeing a lot of Kickstarters when I was on the AAA side, especially from
on the AAA.
Yeah, especially from PC developer. Like we're seeing a lot of Kickstarter at the time. Since I'm at flaregames, I think I never met a team so far on mobile free to play that has been funded through Kickstarter.
It's rare, yeah.
The two classical scheme is either the teams are VC funded, and we actually have a lot of relations with VCs. So there are a lot of VCs that are investing into a company, but they don't feel like the company is mature yet to release their first project on their own. So they are actually approaching publishers and doing introductions because they want us to really help the studio to go somewhere or get some specific skills. And then the second classical scheme is that the studio has been doing another game in the past that is still live, and they still have a couple of people working on that. So they have a revenue flow.
I see. And do you think there are any incompatible Like if you see someone with, I don't know, I mean not VC, but some source of funding, you kind of the deal doesn't work, or
no, not really on the funding side. It's much more on the skill set inside the studio. Like you have some studios that want to self-publish, and they have been building a publishing team or half of a publishing team, and that is very not compatible with us. Like it's very difficult if you have like a user acquisition team in the studio and a user acquisition team at the publisher. Well, first you're doubling the cost, and then on top of that, usually those guys will not like each other very much.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I think from our side, we'd want to understand what the deal structure was between an investor and the developer we're working with to make sure that do they really fit into our template. I want to make sure that developers not going to get squeezed too much in between what we might be asking for and what the investors already committed to the investor. Not because from a moral outrage perspective, but again, for us, does that team have a realistic chance of going on and making more stuff in the future, of being that sustainable business? I don't think I'd necessarily rule it out, but I just want to really talk it through and sense check it, because I wouldn't say no to a deal if I thought that we could genuinely make a difference to a team. Then okay, and I wouldn't want to say no in order for that to be punitive to a team that had maybe already made a bad deal. But yeah, as long as everyone was sort of going into it with open eyes.
Well, and just for transparency, I guess, we've done some deals together. Execution Labs is an early stage investor. A few of our teams have gone on and had publishing deals with Square Enix Collective.
I think you touched the right point in a way that as a publisher, it's exactly like you want to make sure that you're contributing. Like, we're not a bank. Like, if you're just looking for funding, we are not the right partner.
Right. Yeah, you're not just a bank. Right. Understood. Well, and Phil, it's a good point on your side as well, right? Because you've identified this sort of larger vision for what the program is, right? It's not just about ROI. And if an investor is sitting there and kind of is sort of majority owner of this small studio, then really, like, what are you helping in that situation?
There can be other benefits for developers to working with us. I think even if they don't end up sort of funding their next 6 games, then they've had a track record. They've had the experience of working with a publisher and understanding expectations and that kind of stuff. It's on their CV. So there are other sort of more liminal benefits. But yeah, we'd always look at that structure just to kind of make sure. For us, Collective isn't about trying to make profit for big Square Enix. Any profit we make, we put back into Collective in the form of investments or supporting events or whatever it might be. So I think it's important for us, at least, to be working this area, not with the intention of kind of coming in and saying, "Oh, indie development, that's making a lot of money. Let's try and take a piece of that." We're set up to. It's perhaps not huge risk on our part. We recoup that marketing. It's much harder for us to make a profit. In the scheme of things, we absorb a lot of other costs. So yeah, in the end, it's got to make sure we've got to add value, because otherwise there's very little point to us doing it at all.
Understood. Yeah, and this is a question I like to ask because I think it's important for developers to understand that it's rare to have a single source of funding, right? And I spoke about this earlier in my lecture, and in Ella first opening session, where she really ran through all the possible sources, that generally speaking, you're getting some angel money, you're getting some friends and family, maybe you're doing a Kickstarter, you're getting some investor, you're getting funding from a publisher. It's really rare these days that you just go to one spot, get all the millions, and you're good. You really do tend to patch things together like that. So that's why I was asking that one.
Yeah, and the Canada Media Fund is for folks in Canada is obviously has been, I think, a very useful source of funding. I've written numerous letters as kind of sort of registering expressions of interest to try and support applications, because I think that's a good way for teams. So sometimes there are funds locally that you can take advantage of. Sometimes it's a little bit harder in other regions, but yeah, definitely look, and I think it's worth doing the research if you can sort of cobble together sometimes a bit of a patchwork. As long as in the end, everything that comes down, you get what you need, and you're still in control of kind of what you want to keep and what you're prepared to give away. Then, don't be afraid to find several different sources.
Sorry. Make sure as well that you're asking the right person to fund the right thing. So VCs, for example, and angels fund a company. They don't necessarily fund a project. Publishers only fund projects. Like, we are acquiring publishing rights for 1 or 2 titles, but we're not in the business of funding your real estate. For example, if you're like buying the building for your studio, or on the other side, we also have people that come to us sometime, and we do that sometime to fund user acquisition. But you can do that with banks or other forms of funding. VCs, for example, will never fund user acquisition because the return that they are expecting is much higher than any return you can get in user acquisition.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, in terms of deal flow and how you discover projects and the pitching process, and let's dig into that a bit in terms of what are the best ways for developers to reach out to you and or to get their project in front of you and kind of seduce you to invest in their project. Michael, maybe give us some insight.
Yeah, I mean, on our side, so we're attending like all the main trade show. Here, GDC, Gamescom, of course. You can meet us at any trade show and present your project for half an hour. And then it's a lot of networking, right? We all have a pretty strong network in the industry, and we just hear about people that a lot of our studios actually, or a lot of people that we work with are actually coming to us and being like, hey, I just saw that project. I heard about the team, the Left Rovio, or it's like those 3 people that are starting that. Would you like to look at the game? And then sometimes, but it's pretty rare, we see a title in soft launch in one country that we play and we really like, and then we're going to reach out. But I would say it's 5%. 5%.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I think events like this where there's lines of cool games to go check out is one way of doing it. There's obviously things like Pitch and Match. I tried to get out to as many more local events. So a couple of weeks ago, I was at Ludicious in Zurich. Next week, I'm going to be out in Vienna to work with the Supertron guys. That's a great way for me to try to understand, I think, a little bit more about what's happening regionally and where talent's sort of coming from, what's sort of happening there. But then we have the collective website. So at the moment, we're in offline mode because we're just rebuilding it and bringing lots of great, exciting improvements. But normally we publish. We open for submissions for 48 hours in a month. We get a lot of interest there. We publish 1 pitch per month. We drive our community to it. That's a great way for us to sort of see and actually start to meet a team and begin to work with them. I'd say about half of our projects that we're publishing this year have actually started out as having gone through the collective website, and then we've supported a Kickstarter campaign, or sometimes they've even just gone from the collective site to sort of pitching us directly. So yeah, there's a lot of variety. I'm starting to get recommendations now as well from teams that we've worked with in the past. So it's nice to sort of build up that personal network too.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting, the referrals piece. I mean this happens to us as well. That sort of speaks to the value of your own peer networks, right? It's one thing to sort of build something cool in isolation, but you want to be connected to your own peers in your communities and travel to all the different events, so that when you see something cool and then you're having a chat with Phil, you can say, oh, check out this other one, and then vice versa. So there's kind of this lateral value of connectivity. But
funny enough, we also get recommendations from other publishers.
Because something doesn't match their portfolio.
Yeah, I mean, and we do that as well. We have things, we see projects and we're like, hey, the team is great, the project is great, but it's absolutely conflicting with that thing we have in our portfolio, and then we're going to introduce them to other publishers.
Nice. That's nice of you.
Yeah, we've done the same. In fact, every time I talk to somebody, I'll say, make sure you always talk to at least 2 other publishers, because different deal structures may be better for you. And if you don't know other publishers, then I can make introductions to those guys. I'm not just trying to move you away because I don't like your game or whatever, but in the end, you've got to have that experience, and the more options you have, the more information you have. That's the only way to make the best decision for you and your game.
Right. But, just as a point of clarification, there is the indie showcase there on the floor of the 100 whatever games. Are you guys actually taking the time to, walk the aisles and sort of check things out, or?
Yeah, I have done a little bit. Unfortunately, my time here is super limited. Ideally, I would be able to spend a couple of hours kind of walking up and down and trying stuff. But I managed to spend some time yesterday. I think what's clear actually is that every time I come to an event, the bar seems to be just that little bit higher in terms of quality. New people coming in now, new teams. It's a big challenge. Tools are getting better. People are getting more proficient. There are better tutorials out there. Probably education is improving across the board. So a lot of the games I see now, maybe here today, look great. And maybe 3 years ago they would have probably shone as real super standouts. But the truth is now that actually the quality level has gotten so high that you have to actually be a really good game to just be on a par with what a lot of other people are putting out there, unfortunately.
Right. How about you, Michael? Are you walking through the...
Yeah, we have limited resources here, so same thing. I would love to do that more. But yeah, I spent like an hour and a half yesterday, looking around. We're trying to, at some shows, we're always trying to be part of those contests, to be in the jury. For example, for the Google Awards next week, the week after. We're part of the jury, so that's another way to scan another 50, 75 projects.
Right. And so I guess what I'm trying to establish is that it seems obvious that it's valuable to participate in these kind of showcases and events and so on, but you're sort of confirming that it is a valuable way to get out there because there are people like you kind of checking things out.
Definitely. But it's also valuable from the respect of getting feedback from other developers. Get other people to play your games and listen to what they have to say. It can be quite scary, sort of showing, particularly for the first time, your creation. But be open-minded, listen to what people have to say. You don't need to follow that advice or feedback 100%, but usually people say it for a reason. And every so often, people with the funds or the connections, or it might not be a publisher directly or an investor or something like that, but it might be someone who knows someone who can make a direction. So definitely this kind of thing, if you can afford the time and resources to do it, it's a really good thing to do.
Well, and it's also usually your relation with the publisher is not a one-off. It's not like you're going to meet with us and we're going to be like yes or no in half an hour. Most of the time we're starting to have contacts with people, and then they're going to go exactly like you said. They're going to go in those type of contest where they're going to get learnings, and then they're going to come back to us saying oh, you know what, we actually went in that contest and we got that piece of feedback and that piece of feedback, we changed the metagame, and so most of the studio we signed, we've been flirting with them for 4 or 5 months, and we've seen the project changing quite a lot in that time.
Interesting. Yeah, good.
Just one thing I do want to say quickly though is most publishers will have a limited portfolio. The schedule might be mostly full. Maybe there's 1 or 2 gaps. Maybe they're looking for something specific. Maybe they're looking for things which don't conflict with the stuff that they already have. When you're doing meetings with people and you're pitching, and the answer ultimately is no, and it doesn't lead anywhere, don't be discouraged. It may have nothing to do with the quality of your game. It may be that the will of the person you're talking to is, all things being equal, they would love to sign the game, but there are other restrictions. So for example, right now, while we have a limited number of production investment pots, currently they're all tied up with other investments. So until we start to recoup those, I've seen a dozen games, in the past since the beginning of this year that I would think are really, really strong and I would love to talk further to. But if they need production investment, right now I can't do anything. Don't take it personally. Try and learn what you can. Ask good questions. Take what you can from every meeting you do. But don't let it stop you.
And to add to that, also ask questions to the publisher and to the people you're meeting. You can have a very honest conversation about, hey, are you investing right now? Or you have 1 or 2 games that are coming in the market and you're trying to delay your investment by 2 or 3 months. Are you looking for a specific title? Are you looking to replace a title in your portfolio? Are you looking to invest into a new genre? it's really a two-sided conversation. It's not an audition.
Yeah, and it's a good point. I mean, certainly depending on what time frame you're expecting your game to launch, and this is the kind of questions to ask, is like, is there room in your lineup in that time frame? Because certainly most publishers try to have this rolling schedule of slots and deployment windows.
Yeah. And often, to be honest, from our side, managing that's really tough. Particularly, with games at indie level, you can't sit down 9 months in advance and say, right, that's the street date. You just can't put that kind of pressure on a team. You don't know what point you're going to actually be able to set a release date. So you might work with a month. What we found is that pretty much every game we've signed has slipped. Obviously, that depends very much on the resources of the studio, but we can't say, well, you've missed your slot now, so we have to consider what our commitments are to other games, and often things like schedules can be a bit fluid. So don't be afraid to ask.
Cool, good point. So related to this part of the discussion, can you give more insight then into what you're looking for in particular?
It's a horrible question.
Yeah, it's always a good one. It's always a tough one to answer.
You go first.
Okay, thanks. It's pretty easy. So right now at flaregames, we have, if I look at our 2017 lineup, we have some pretty big projects that have been started from scratch, that are coming to the market, pretty big investments. So we're not necessarily, I would say, in terms of risk level, or we are pretty much at the maximum we could get for 2017. So we're looking for potentially 1 or 2 titles to release in 2017, but mainly products that are already in soft launch. So like we can see some KPIs, and not like perfect KPIs, right? It's like it can have like a problem into long-term retention or into user acquisition, but a product that we can work with you for like 6 months and put that in the market in 2017. And then we're starting to invest in our 2018 lineup. For the 2018 lineup, things are a bit more open because we're just starting to build on that.
Cool. Phil?
See, it bought me some time, but I'm interested in anything which I think is going to catch the attention of core gamers ultimately. We don't have specific requirements about genre. We actively want to try and find a diverse lineup. So, right now we've put out a point and click and a first person puzzler. We've got, a co-op multiplayer, a first person shooter. We've got side scrolling platformers, narrative driven stuff and non-narrative driven stuff. So it's kind of hard for me to say, well, I think it's very subjective. I want to see a game that I want to play. What does that mean? Really tough. I want to see something ultimately, I think, which feels like it's, I suppose the ideal is something which is either better or different. Again, that's very hard. But if you're a game that's inspired by FTL, then how are you moving that on? What's the X that you're adding to actually sustain interest in people? I think that most people work visually, so I like to try and really understand what the game's going to be like to play. That doesn't always require a vertical slice or a demo or even a video, but the more you have that puts me in the game, so I can understand what it is to play, then I guess the happier I am. In the end, it comes down to degrees of risk. The more there is that really exemplifies gameplay and the moment-to-moment stuff and the emotions I'll feel as a player when the game is released, then the closer I am to thinking about the game, what you think about the game. The further away that I might make assumptions, the more assumptions I have to make, then the less I know. So I think really for me it's about making sure that the pitch is really well explained and thoroughly thought through. But I can't say a specific genre or pixel art only or hand drawn or whatever. It just depends.
Is there anything that sort of the inverse question? Is there anything you just won't touch? Like, I don't need another X.
So, and again, this is a personal thing. I'm not saying this is a bad kind of game to make, but when there are games that are heavily influenced by retro styles, I can admire the games, but I have no idea how to find an audience, where that audience for retro games is. I've seen some terrific designs in the past couple of years, but I want to be able to look at something and think, kind of sort of half close my eyes and see what that Steam page is going to like and understand, who it is that's going to be buying that game. So I'm not saying retro games are bad, far from it, but yeah, that's just a personal thing. Yeah, in the end, the person on the other side of the table is just that, a person with their own preferences, their own hang-ups, their own foibles. So, yeah.
How about you? Anything you just sort of blanket stay away from?
Yeah, well, usually we're trying to only publish things that are different. So if it's like a Clash of Clans remake or a Clash Royale remake, we see a lot of them right now. Usually we're not touching that because it's just very. I mean, if you have a market that has been really crowded for like 3 or 4 years, it's just very difficult to craft a story around that. Like, you won't have any press coverage, and user acquisition going to be very difficult.
Right. Okay. But again, hard to articulate really what it is in terms of
well, this is it. I mean, video games is a very kind of subjective process. Sure. I think it's much easier for tabletop games, for example. Yeah, I guess it comes back to the Kickstarter question, right? Tabletop games right now are very successful and continuing to be so on Kickstarter. Why? Because everyone who looks at that is seeing what it's going to end up like. There's very little variation between what's in the pitch video and what you're going to receive through the mail. Video games, is a creative process, and it can be 18 months or 2 years before you see the final thing. A lot can change. This thing called gameplay, this thing called, feeling. You can design something to death, and then when you put it into practice, it doesn't quite feel the way you expect it to. So changes have to be made, cuts have to be made. It's you have to sort of look at something and kind of take a stab at thinking, where's this going to end up? And the variance is, can be high sometimes. So yeah, it's very hard to say, here's a checklist of things.
Sure. Actually, we'll open it up to the audience if anyone has any questions. I think they've been pretty sincere and open with their answers. So you've got them up here on stage. Don't be shy to ask questions. One right up here. Yeah. The microphone is coming.
I would like to ask more about marketing, and you mentioned 100,000 euros as a marketing budget. How do you split it? How do you calculate it? Does it worth to go to events? And why does it worth to contact press? And why? And how do you spend that money, basically?
Yeah, so that'll be split across a number of things. We think about trailer creation, key art, sometimes logos. Sometimes developers already have really strong design for that kind of stuff, so we won't need to look at that. We always do all these things in cooperation with developers as well, so we're not imposing this kind of stuff. In the past, we've worked with teams who have very, very strong video capabilities, so actually there's been cost savings there to the marketing budget because they can create that stuff themselves. But from our side, we would want to really know that is going to be the right level of quality. Media spend, whether that's things like Gamer Network or IGN. Sometimes it'll be working with, people like Twitch. We don't really pay broadcasters or content creators on YouTube and Twitch directly. We have great relationships with internally as Square Enix with a lot of people. So again, that's just another thing we draw on. Event costs. Would come out of that. But we try to look for ways to offset that wherever we can. We want to try and make those marketing budgets stretch as far as we possibly can. So, for example, last year we had all of the collective games were at San Diego Comic-Con as part of the Nerd HQ thing. And the marketing team we work with actually negotiated an advertising deal with Kellogg's. So the whole attendance, event costs, travel, the hardware, the production, the sort of booth production and design, everything was paid for. So none of that actually came out of the individual game budgets at all. At E3 last year, blame Final Fantasy 15, but we only actually had 2 pods for collective. We only had room for 2 pods on the show floor. But the positive side of that was we got it for free. Obviously, big Square Enix paid for the whole thing, but none of that came out of the direct marketing budget. So we're always looking for ways to try to stretch that as far as possible. If we can, find a partner for something here and offset the cost of that. And yeah, so it goes across a lot of things, but usually trailer, key art, those things are obviously going to help PR and marketing to sell the game. Media spend, we want to try and drive awareness in a smart way as far as possible to targeted audience. Event costs to get the game out there, get people playing. Those are the main things.
I'm guessing marketing spend for you is quite different.
Yeah, well, the key thing on our side, asset creation, going to be quite big because one of the things that we're going to really focus the last months before launch is really optimizing the funnel. So usually for one icon you're going to see in the store, there are like 10 to 15 icons that have been created. For 5 screenshots that you see in the store, there are between 50 and 100 screenshots that have been created. Same thing with the banner. Like, if you get featured by Apple or Google, like usually those banners, we work on that and iterate. So I would say if I look at the cost to launch, we spend a lot in research as well. So in user acquisition before the release of the game when we're in soft launch. So I would say the cost to launch, like marketing can be like 50% on asset. And then when we are live, it's going to be a lot of media. We're going to do a lot of user acquisition, like performance-based user acquisition. And then for some games, TV.
Has Flare done TV?
Yeah, we've done TV in the past, and we are actually doubling down on that. So we have a big TV campaign booked for May.
Awesome.
But it's like, I guess the difference for us is that on the mobile side, if I look at a project 2 years after release, marketing cost going to be 4 or 5 times the production cost of the game.
Long term. There's a question at the back.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for sharing such interesting information. I have a question. Could you also share some comments on your opinion about the development of gaming and virtual reality? Many plan that it would happen a lot faster, but it goes quite slowly. Could you please share what you see about this field of the gaming industry business? Thank you.
Publishing VR.
Yeah. So my personal feeling is that I think VR is still pretty early. I'm pretty sure that it's going to become a core part of the industry, in a long-term basis. But right now, for us, at collective level, at indie level, again, I think it remains to be seen where the opportunities are. The question I always ask with anything that we look to sign is, can we make a difference? Can we live up to the expectations of the teams we're working to, and do we have the potential to exceed them? I'm not sure how to answer that question in relation to VR because at the moment I don't know clearly how to sell VR, where the audience is, what they're looking for. I think so much is still up in the air that it's a little bit of a pioneer's world right now. I'm not sure who the winners are in this early stage. I'm sure there will be some good successes. 1 or 2 indie teams will actually create things which will capture the imagination. But the install base is, still in early stages, and I think it'll be a little while before I'd be comfortable with looking at VR. Not because I don't believe in it as a technology. I think it can be transformative. But right now it's just really hard to understand the opportunity.
Mobile VR free to play.
Yeah, it's like, at flaregames we're not planning to invest in VR at least in the next 24 months. There are multiple reasons for that. The first one is if I look at the ROI and the ROI cycle that I'm expecting on VR right now, VC, for example, that have a 7-year horizon can totally invest in that and get an ROI. But the publisher is usually looking at starting to make money 18 months or 24 months after. And then I just cannot see the economics works on that horizon. And then on top of that, exactly like you, it's about when we say the project, I'm always asking myself, how do we contribute? How do we help the developer? And frankly, at flaregames right now, we're just not geared to help on any VR project, so we'll probably not help you at all. But I'm sure we're going to see some. In the same way that we're starting to see some VCs that are becoming specific about VR and raising a specific VR fund. I'm sure that 2 to 3 years down the road, we're going to see some VR publishers.
Yeah.
In a funny way, I think that the VR really exemplifies one of the big challenges for video games across the board, whether you're talking about AAA publishers or mobile publishers or indie developers. Things move constantly and quickly. We can't sit back and say, well, 10 years ago, this is how we did it, so that's still going to work today. At times, you almost can't even look back 12 months. And then when you think about the amount of dev time, we can look at something and say, well, this game took 2.5 years to make. 2.5 years ago, we would have done it this way. You have to continually learn and relearn and evaluate and reevaluate sort of the landscape. So, yeah, I mean, the VR opportunity will come around. But I think, it's just kind of hard to sort of say now, it's going to be like this or this or this.
And I would say the majority of the content level funding has come from the platforms, right? Because they're trying to seed content. Whereas on the VC side, a little bit, but less so. That's gone more in tools, technology, pipeline, service, hardware for VR, and the publishers are just not ready to service that. So, all right, there's a question over here.
Yeah, thank you for a great talk. My question is that if, primarily to Phil, but also to Mikkel, if you've seen dozens of cool games kind of pass by, and you're like, look, I'm committed, I can't do that, and based on a little experience. It seems to me that even if you approach an indie publisher in the end of for example 2016 to publish your game possibly in the end of 2017, it already might be too late. Is there a quarter in a year that your company is kind of still formulating how many games it will take in? What's the best time for an indie game to actually approach?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, again, there's probably no one specific answer. I think different teams may work at different points as well. So I can only speak for Collective. For us, we have 7 games that are going to be releasing before the end of this year. Generally, we're looking for up to 10 per year. So, right now, if something that came along that really sort of fit in perfectly, we could probably put another game in this calendar year. But right now, we've got nothing really lined up for January 2018 onwards. So I guess somewhere between 6 and 12 months pre-release. We certainly wouldn't want to sign anything later than 4 months before release, because we're starting to eat fully into production time then for spooling up all the marketing stuff and the trailer creation and the key art and all the planning and the QA, etc., etc. So yeah, I mean, after 4 months before release, that's kind of getting into danger zone. But 6 to 12, I guess, is.
I'm guessing roughly the same.
Yeah, I would stretch your 4 months to 3 months, but not go above that. So yeah, clearly, if you're expecting to release, in the next 1 or 2 months, there's nothing we can. I mean, we can just not add value at this point. So yeah, the minimum would be 3 months before launch, and then. I would say anywhere before that, right? Most of the project we see, especially on mobile, it's pretty easy you don't need a lot of funding to prototype. So usually most of the projects we see, they have software, either prototype, ideally soft launch, or anything in between. So usually they are 12 months to release, sometimes 18 months to release. We're not, on our side, we're not listed, so we don't really care about the quarter. It's not like we care about the titles that we're releasing, but we don't care about trying to hit some financial numbers this quarter or stuff like that. And if I map what we're looking at right now, we have 2 big releases coming, one in April and one in May. And I think we are a bit cautious about our investment right now. But starting in June, we're going to invest much more.
Yeah. Well, and I know you initially directed it at Phil, so I'm guessing you're working on a premium Steam sort of console type game and not a mobile. But mobile does change the equation a little bit, because you can be in a soft launch window, which does change the dynamic. Whereas, for a premium game, you really do need that lead up time to go to enough festivals to build the buzz, to generate a following online. And as Phil says,
and I'd say also, again, it kind of depends on the type of deal, right? So right now we're only looking for marketing and distribution only deals. But when our production pots become available, then that 6 to 12 months maybe can even be 12 to 24. Yeah. I remember, so we announced a game called Forgotten Anne at at EGX last year, and I think the first meeting I had with those guys was the previous year at Nordic Games, so probably best part of 18 months before it was even announced, and that game, isn't slated until much later this year. So that, that's a much longer term thing when we're putting money into a project and we're planning out milestones. So again, it just depends on the type of deal that we're looking for.
And generally also, I mean, it's a good idea to just try to build relationships with all the publisher reps. And, I think maybe it was Michael who said it, right? Like, you don't just see them have a 30-minute meeting and then you sign a deal, but it really often is this sort of long courting process of going for drinks and having a meeting here, then seeing each other at GDC and seeing the progress of the game and sort of things evolving on their roadmap and so on. So you really do have to think about it as a relationship process, not, when am I going to jump out and grab some publishers and, in one shot at one show. So do think of it as a much sort of longer term relationship building process. We
actually have a lot of meetings with studios that are not specifically pitching a game or a project, but who are just like, having the annual GDC catch up where it's like, hey, what are you guys up to? And
what are you looking for?
And yeah, like, are you prototyping something right now? What are you thinking about the market? Or are you planning to start a prototype in the next 3 months? Or how is the relation with your current publisher as well? Because that's always interesting for us.
Yeah, it's because you're sort of also collecting knowledge and insight, but for the developers, then it's important to have those kinds of meetings in terms of what are you looking for, what are you not looking for, and that in part then informs your own decisions about your development process. So really, again, think of it as a long-term relationship building process.
And I guess it's the same thing for you. It also helped us, changing our approach and changing our product and changing our offer, right? Because we have like developers that are coming to us with like different needs, and we're like, for example, right now we're thinking historically we're coming from funding like 24 months development, and now we have a lot of people that are coming to us with actually like games that are like 3, 4, 5 months from release. And we're like, well, how do we engage with those people? How do we deliver value and help them making a better game in that very short period of time?
Cool. All right, folks, that's all the time we have. A big thank you to our two panelists for giving some good insight, and good luck to all of you. Good stuff.